Hi, boys and girls. I'm going to read you a story. It's called A Bad Case of Stripes by David Shannon. And remember, David Shannon is the one who has that little white Scotty dog hidden in his stories. This is one of my first David Shannon books I ever had. Camilla Cream loved lima beans, but she never ate them. All of her friends hated lima beans, and she wanted to fit in. Camilla was always worried about what other people thought of her. Today, she was fretting even more than usual. It was the first day of school, and she couldn't decide what to wear. There were so many people to impress. She tried on 42 outfits, but none of them seemed quite right. She put on a pretty red dress and looked in the mirror. Then she screamed. Ooh. Her mother ran into the room and she screamed too. "Oh my heavens," she cried. "You're completely covered with stripes." This was certainly true. Camilla was striped from head to toe. She looked like a rainbow. Mrs. Cream felt Camilla's forehead. "Do you feel all right?" she asked. "I feel fine," Camilla answered. "But just look at me." "You get back in bed this instant," her mother ordered. "You are not going to school today." Camilla was relieved. She didn't want to miss the first day of school, but she was afraid of what the other kids would say, and she had no idea what to wear with those crazy stripes. Isn't she funny? So funny. That afternoon, Dr. Bumble came to examine Camilla. "Most extraordinary," he exclaimed. "I've never seen anyone like it. Are you having any coughing, sneezing, runny nose, aches, pains, chills, hot flashes, dizziness, drowsiness, shortness of breath, or uncontrollable twitching?" "Nope," said Camilla. "I feel fine." "Well then," Dr. Bumble said, turning to Mrs. Cream, "I don't see any reason why she shouldn't go to school tomorrow. Here's some ointment. This should help clear up those stripes in a few days. If it doesn't, you know where to reach me." And off he went. Isn't this nice? The doctor made a home visit to her house. The next day was a disaster. Everyone at school laughed at Camilla. They called her Camilla Crayon and Night of the Living Lollipop. She tried her best to act as if everything was normal, but when class said the Pledge of Allegiance, her stripes turned red, white, and blue, and she broke out in stars. Oh my gosh. Still no little white doggy. The other kids thought this was great. One yelled out, "Let's see some purple polka dots." Sure enough, Camilla turned all purple polka dotty. Someone else shouted, "Checkerboard!" and patterns of squares covered her skin. Soon, everyone was calling out different shapes and colors, and poor Camilla was changing faster than she could change channels on her television. So sad. Still no white Scotty dog. White shirt though. That night, Mr. Harms, the school principal, called. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Cream," he said. "I'm going to have to ask you to keep Camilla home from school. She's just too much of a distraction, and I've been getting calls from other parents. They're afraid those stripes may be contagious." Camilla was so embarrassed. She couldn't believe that 2 days ago everyone liked her. Now nobody wanted to be in the same room as her. Her father tried to make her feel better. "Is there anything I can get you, sweetheart?" he asked. "No, thank you," sighed Camilla. What she really wanted was a nice plate of lima beans, but she had been laughed at enough for one day. Still no Scotty dog. She's got her feelings hurt. Well, yes, I see, said Dr. Mumble when Mrs. Cream phoned the next day. I think I better bring in a specialist. We'll be right over. About an hour later, Dr. Bumble arrived with 4 people in long white coats. He introduced them to the Creams. This is Dr. Group, Dr. Sponge, Dr. Cricket, and Dr. Young. Then the specialist went to work on Camilla. They squeezed and jabbed and tapped and tested. It was very uncomfortable for her. Well, it's not the mumps, concluded Dr. Group. Or the measles, said Dr. Sponge. Definitely not chicken pox, put in Dr. Cricket. Or sunburn, said Dr. Young. Try these, said the specialist. They each handed her a bottle filled with different colored pills. Take one each night before you go to bed, said Dr. Group. Then they all filed to the front door, followed by Dr. Bumble. See, now do you see the white Scotty dog? I don't think so. A lot of medicine for a little girl. The next day, Camilla took her medicine. It was awful. When she woke up the next morning, she did feel different. But when she got dressed, her clothes didn't fit right. She looked in the mirror, and there, staring back at her, was a giant multicolored pill with her face on it. Oh my gosh. Still don't see the Scotty dog. Dr. Bumble rushed over as soon as Mrs. Cream called, but this time instead of specialists, he brought the experts. Dr. Gord and Mr. Mellon were the finest scientist mind in the land. Once again, Camilla was poked and prodded and looked at and listened to. The experts wrote down lots of numbers. Then they huddled together and whispered. Dr. Gord finally spoke. It might be a virus, he announced with authority. Suddenly, fuzzy little virus balls appeared all over Camilla. It kind of looks like corona, huh? Or possibly some form of bacteria, said Dr. Mellon. Out popped squiggly little bacteria tails. Or it could be fungus, added Dr. Gord. Instantly, Camilla was covered with different colored fungus. The experts looked at Camilla, then at each other. We need to go over these numbers again back at our lab, said Dr. Gord. We'll call you when we know something. But the experts didn't have a clue, much less a cure for her. Look at all the diseases, huh? Poor thing. By now, the TV news had found out about Camilla. Reporters from every channel were outside her house telling the story of the bizarre case of the incredible changing kid. Soon, a huge crowd had camped out on her front lawn. OMG. Do you guys see something on one of these pages? What is this? Right by the reporter. The Creams were swamped with kinds of remedies from psychologists, allergists, herbalists, nutritionists, physicists, and old medicine men, a guru, and even a veterinarian. Each so-called cure only added on to poor Camilla's strange appearance until it was hard to even recognize her. She sprouted roots and berries and crystals and feathers and long furry tails, but nothing was working. Look at poor Camilla. One day, a woman who called herself an environmentalist therapist claimed she could cure Camilla. Close your eyes, she said. Breathe deeply and become one with your room. I wish you hadn't said that. Camilla groaned slowly, and she started to melt into the walls of her room. Her bed became her mouth. Her nose was a dresser, and 2 paintings were her eyes. The therapist screamed and ran from the house. "What are we going to do?" cried Mrs. Cream. "It just keeps getting worse and worse," she began to sob. Remember, sob means when you cry really, really hard. So her mommy's very upset right now. At that moment, Mr. Cream heard a quiet little knock at the front door. He opened it, and there stood the old woman, who was just as plump and sweet as a strawberry. "Excuse me," she said brightly, "but I think I can help." Oh, how nice. She went into Camilla's room and looked around. "My goodness," she said with a shake of her head. "What have we have here? A bad case of stripes. One of the worst I've ever seen." She pulled out a container of small green beans from her bag. "Here," she said, "these might do the trick." "Are those magic beans?" asked Mr. Cream. "Oh, my, no," replied the kind old woman. "There's no such thing. These are just plain old lima beans. I'll bet you like some, wouldn't you?" she asked Camilla. Camilla wanted a big heaping plate full of lima beans, more than just about anything, but she was still afraid to admit it. "Yuck," she said. "No one likes lima beans, especially me." "Oh dear," said the old woman. "I guess I was wrong about you." She put the beans back into her bag and started towards the door. Camilla watched the old woman walk away. Those beans would taste so good, and being laughed at for eating them is nothing compared to what I've been going through. She finally couldn't stand it anymore. "Wait," she cried. "The truth is, I really love lima beans." "I thought so," said the old woman with a smile. She took a handful of beans and popped them into Camilla's mouth. Good. So her problem was the lima beans. Suddenly, the branches, the feathers, and the squiggly tails began to disappear. Then the whole room swirled around. When it stopped, there stood Camilla, and everything was back to normal. "I'm cured," she shouted. "Yes," said the old woman. "I knew the real you was in there somewhere." She patted Camilla on the head. Then she went outside and vanished into the crowd. Oh, she's back to herself now. Afterward, Camilla wasn't quite the same. Some of the kids at school said she was weird, but she didn't care one bit. She ate all the lima beans she wanted and never had even a touch of stripes again. The end. So remember, always do what you want to do. You make good choices for yourself, not what your friends say, what you want. I miss you. I love you. Bye, everybody.